What's up, guys? Philip Collin, Pack Pythons, back in the snake pit, and today we are treading where no man has gone before. I think I have a plan that is almost foolproof. For anyone that's been following along, you will be very surprised to see me holding two snakes right now. And there's a reason, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. This is Titan. He is a male albino. I don't think he's inchy. He could be inchy. Kind of hard to tell. The contrasting pattern is very confusing. I can ID a normal inchy very easily, but you flip-flop that pattern and it gets confusing. I produced him in clutch number 5. If you wanted to go back through the videos, actually I'll throw it right here when we cut the eggs for clutch number 5. He's currently going in the shed and looking fine. And this is Athena. I don't think Athena produced this year. Actually, I know she didn't. I see her card still there. I should say last year. But she's a big, beautiful female, het albino. And at some point in the future, probably in about a year, these two will be paired together. And I'm not trying to hold her on my neck. So I'm gonna move the camera and we're gonna dive into what is Pack Python's Nidovirus plan going forward, how we're gonna work around it, and use logic to break it down in a way that does not require the science to catch up. And I'll get more into that in a second, so stay tuned. All right, guys, before we get much further, can't go on without giving a shout out to my dude, Shane at Small Town Exotics. Definitely love the shirt, the logo, his branding, his strategy on YouTube. Dude, you got it going on. Can't believe he came all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast and didn't come say hello. I'm so heartbroken. But you ever come this way again, definitely hit me up. And at some point, I'll be going to the West Coast and I'll be hitting you up. So either way, one of us is gonna link up for sure. So you guys want the good news or the bad news? Let's start with the bad news. Bad news is Nidovirus research and the science behind Nido is not where it needs to be. I think I've kind of dabbled in that and kind of explained that the testing was unreliable and that, or not completely unreliable, but shaky at best. It's hard to be certain what I have at this point. So my plans of doing experiments to try to push the understanding of how this virus works it's basically impossible at this point. It's impossible to do it and get reliable results because I've tested some of these snakes 4 times now and gotten different results. I've tested from 3 different facilities, and the ones that you would expect to give, the most accurate results have shown all negatives. And then other facilities have confirmed through necropsy that we absolutely have it in the collection. So the bad news is the Nido world is not where it needs to be in order for me to push the boundaries. So then how do we as a community move forward and understand our place in this process? Because we can continue to ignore it, and then it can continue to ruin people's lives and their livelihoods and their businesses or their hobbies or their pets or whatever. It's a violent thing when it rears its head. Now, the good news is that from what I can tell, it does not seem to be quite as contagious as I expected. Now, maybe it's more contagious than you expected, but from my point of view, the adults that were breeding the season that the Nido showed up, effectively, I had 20-something animals that were all in bed with each other. If you follow the pairings, one male is with several females. Those females might have been with multiple males. Those other males were with other females. And if Nido is this, extremely contagious, ravishing disease, virus, then my whole adult collection should be dead. And the ones that aren't dead should be testing positive for Nido. And that just didn't happen. I lost probably 25% of my adult collection, which is a big hit for sure. But in reality, that's not what you would expect from some virus that's got this cloud hovering over it, of it just being this wicked, evil thing. So, what I think is happening is that the shed cycle of the virus, which has been confirmed by laboratories, is, in this case at least, peaking very briefly, affecting the animals immediately that it's encountering, and then the shed cycle disappears and it goes back effectively dormant, where it can't be detected and it's no longer spreading. Because if it was continuing to spread, there's a very good chance that a large population, if it would have spread for a month, let's say, it would have killed my entire collection, or at least infected the entire collection. But it didn't. Assuming that my logic is correct in this, understanding what happened, it seems more like it was contagious for a few days and only affected that small number of animals. And then those animals were violently impacted by the disease, by the virus, and it became very apparent very quickly what was going on. And that caused me to react and save the remainder of my collection. Obviously, if I would neglect it just indefinitely, that would be problematic. So the key is, how do we work around this if the science isn't there? And I have a plan. I don't know if this is a term that anyone else has come up with. It just kind of came to me, but I called it micro-colonies, micro-collections. I don't know what you want to call it, but I call it micro-colonies. And the idea and the reason why I could hold those two animals is because I have gone through my entire collection. I've picked the ones that fit together in a genetic group, and I have designated those 5 to 8 animals, let's say, as a group. And as far as my collection goes, those animals will stay with me indefinitely. They will be bred to each other, to only the animals inside that group, and they will never be bred outside of the group, ever, period. I can add more genetics to the group by bringing in a new animal, as long as it's never been in another group. So effectively, I could raise up a hatchling of my own, designate it to a group that's already existing, and it goes in that group, it breeds in that group the rest of its life, and it never comes out of that group. And the benefit to that is that by isolating the collection into smaller collections, you effectively eliminate the possibility of that animal ravishing your entire collection. And then on top of that, it simplifies managing the animals. So like before, I had effectively 70 animals, each in their own little quarantine. And when I went from cage to cage, I'm going from quarantine to quarantine, and I've got to be super sterile and wash everything. And as far as if an animal doesn't eat its food, it gets thrown away. It can't be reused because you don't want to transmit that to the next animal. But if I know that these 8 or 10 animals are going to be in bed for the rest of their life, then effectively there's no benefit to me protecting them from each other, because once a year they're all going to be paired and breeding. And if that's the case, then I can share food amongst them. There is obviously still some risks there for parasite transmission and virus transmission or whatever. Anything could pop up. But it's a very practical idea, and it incorporates some of the things that people are already kind of doing and just getting a little more elaborate. I could imagine that big breeders could even potentially do something like this and protect their whole collection from the spread of Nidovirus and other potential parasites, IBD or whatever. So the two snakes I showed you, Titan and Athena, are in the same group. That little male, like I mentioned earlier, at some point in about a year will be breeding to that female. So there is no point in me now protecting him from her or her from him. It benefits no one in the situation. Now, does that mean that I'm just going to ignore Nidovirus and carry on breeding like anybody else? No, the plan is a bit more elaborate than that. We will have to have a facility, a building, specifically for adults and effectively animals that have been added to a group. Will all be in one single building all together, right? There will be bug zappers in there to protect from any kind of extra parasite transmission from flies or whatever. Again, the rodents that are fed to a group will stay in that group, period. No questions asked. If I feed to one and he doesn't take it, and I offer it to the other 7 or whatever, and no one takes it, it just gets thrown away. If it can't be saved, it's wasted. It is what it is. But at least I have a few extra mouths to potentially waste less food, which is good for the business, as you know, or good for anyone's business that's going to try to use this tactic going forward. And then once you have your adults set up and the groups are all arranged, ideally, they're not arranged right now, but I have them arranged on paper, and I will arrange them when the time comes. At this point, it doesn't really matter, except for when I'm feeding, to have them organized, because then you could, you know that these 10 are get together, so when you switch food or when you're cleaning, you can go from cage to cage. So really, as far as cleaning goes, it would benefit me to set it up right now. But I haven't done it yet. So as of right now, I've just still been cleaning my hands constantly. But that's the other benefit, is that when I'm cleaning cages, I can go from those 8 cages, cage to cage, and be kind of careful, but I don't have to be super paranoid, because again, those animals effectively are in bed together. Doesn't make a difference. Second, from that main building will be a separate space. Could be in my house, could be in my garage, could be wherever. But it'll be a building or a space just for my incubator. By itself, no snakes, no live animals around it, just the incubator. So the groups produce eggs. Technically, if there's Nidovirus, if let's say the mother has Nido or the father had it and gave it to the mother or whatever, the dame, when she produces eggs, Nidovirus can be present on the outside of the egg. So you don't want to leave those eggs necessarily in that space. So the idea is to take those eggs, put them in a tub, bring them to the incubator in a separate space, and leave them there for 60 days. Once the eggs are hatching, that 60-day period of them just laying dormant, the virus potentially just laying dormant on the egg, by the time the hatchlings come out, any present virus is not transmittable, it's not viable, so the offspring comes out. There's no vertical transmission to the offspring, so those animals will come out of the egg 100% Nidovirus free. negative of Nidovirus, 100%. As far as all the research has been showing, which is awesome. So now we've got animals isolated that are all clinically healthy, producing eggs. Eggs are incubating, coming out Nido negative, and then those Nido negative animals all go into their own space, separate from the adults, and that's the grow out space. And that building will be 100% Nido negative for sure, based on what everyone has, what the current understanding of Nidovirus is. As far as we know, 100% of the offspring comes out Nido negative. So then I can sell animals, healthy, whole, perfect, fine animals, out of that second building and function as a normal breeder. And then I can also keep my holdbacks in there, and whenever they're ready and the space has been accommodated for, grow outs can get moved into the groups. And at that point, if there is some asymptomatic animal lingering in there, they could potentially get sick. That is a risk, but it's a risk everyone's taking at this point. I'm just trying to control it as much as I possibly can. And ideally, it goes into a healthy group. It gets raised up and bred with that group, and it stays with that group the rest of its life. And then in order to progress genetically, that's just going to cause me to sprout and produce new groups. So I'll start with, like right now, I probably got about 10 groups. That's going to sprout into 20 groups. And that's going to sprout into 40 groups or whatever. And as the groups expand, the old groups don't go away. I do intend to keep these animals long term. And then if someone down the road, ideally, I keep these animals long enough that the Nidovirus research catches up and we get to a point where we can more accurately test these animals and be sure that they're negative, so that I could potentially sell animals that don't fit into my genetic needs. But as far as I'm concerned, until we get to that point, I'm just going to keep breeding these animals. Keep them around. If they get to a point where they can't breed, just keep them around and feed them. Keep them happy and healthy until they pass or whatever. As long as they're healthy, I don't intend to just dump them on somebody else unless I can be very confident that I'm selling them a whole, happy, healthy animal, whatever. So that's the plan. I think it's pretty solid. If anyone has any extra input, feel free to drop it down in the comments. I appreciate it. And this video has probably been a little long-winded, but this is something I've been working on for quite a while. I definitely appreciate all you guys' support, and I really look forward to this thing growing and hopefully influencing others. I really don't foresee a whole lot of Nidovirus videos in the future. I really feel like this kind of ties a nice tidy bow on it, and I'm okay with that. If some new revelation pops up, for sure, I will gladly share. If I come up with any new information, or if it decides to pop its head back up amongst these groups, then that'll be something we'll deal with when it happens. But for the time being, we are in good shape. I've got right around 70 very healthy animals, and they're visually healthy, clinically healthy. And I really think we're heading in a good direction. And where we're building, if you've been following on Instagram or you watched the last video, I mentioned it, the last few videos I've mentioned it probably. Building a house, got a ton of room out there to build this big multi-building facility. And I've already got a vision of it in my head, and I can't wait to get out there and put it together. I'll take you guys on that journey, and I guess that's it. I feel like I should be saying more, because this has gone on so long. It just feels so odd to just, say, oh, well, I feel like I've got it pretty well sorted out. I don't understand it still. It's still kind of a mystery, and science doesn't fully understand it. But I feel like I understand it well enough to work with it, around it, through it, logically, safely for the animals, and to protect my investment and to protect the animals that I care about. So, hope you guys take some pointers from this, use it, move forward in a confident direction. I'm still going to test new animals that I add to my collection outside of the ones that I produce myself. I absolutely will still maintain a quarantine. All of that's not going to change. But how I function amongst myself and with the animals that I'm producing, that's the route we're going, and I'm feeling really good about it. So that's it for today. Much love. You guys take it easy. If it ain't easy, don't take it. Peace.